Welcome back, my friend. Tonight, we return to London in 1066 as William the Conqueror crosses the sea, claims the English crown, and raises the first stones of Norman power. Settle into comfort, soften your breathing, and let the misty Thames carry you into a city beginning to change forever. Subscribe to Deep Sleep Storytelling for more peaceful journeys through history, science, and the mysteries of the sea.
The King Who Came by Sea. London in the autumn of 1066 was awake, tense, and nervous. The kind of nervous where an entire city feels like someone waiting for exam results, even though they very clearly did not study, did not read the notes, and possibly didn't even know they were enrolled in the class. The news traveled fastest along the river. Shipmen brought whispers up the Thames before messengers could get their boots out the door. And those whispers grew into rumors, and the rumors into anxiety that curled into the streets like mist. Harold Godwinson was dead. The King of England, the man who had marched north, marched south, fought 2 battles in a matter of weeks, and tried his very best not to die, had died. People argued over the details. Oh yes, definitely an arrow to the eye, some said confidently. Others shook their heads. No, I heard he was hacked to pieces. And someone in the corner chimed in. My cousin's neighbor's brother-in-law says Harold didn't die at all. He disguised himself as a monk and ran away. Medieval gossip was almost Olympic level, and medieval storytellers, of course, adored drama. Eye injuries were irresistible. A good arrow to the eye story was the medieval equivalent of a blockbuster ending. But the truth mattered less than the result. Harold was gone. England had no king, and when a throne becomes empty, someone always comes to sit on it. And so, out across the gray waters of the English Channel, a man prepared himself, a man who had been waiting for this moment for years. William, Duke of Normandy, a man whose ambitions could have built a small nation, even if he never left his breakfast table. A man with a lineage he was certain gave him the right to England's crown. A man with a temper that suggested he did not enjoy hearing the word no. And, yes, a man with a beard that could intimidate even the most heartless tax collector. He gathered his fleet, wooden ships with painted shields, sails stretched tight with wind and purpose, armored soldiers, archers, horses that probably wondered why they were being dragged onto boats again. William's fleet didn't simply sail, it arrived like a statement that said, "Hello, England, I am here. Please prepare accordingly." The Battle of Hastings had proven William's military power, but claiming a kingdom, that required something more delicate. And London, even in 1066, was no ordinary town. It was wealthy, sometimes suspiciously wealthy. Its merchants controlled trade routes. Its guilds commanded influence. Its walls were strong. Its gates sturdy. Its citizens stubborn. Londoners were known for two things: being very good at making money, being very bad at letting anyone tell them what to do. If William marched straight in swinging swords, London would resist. Not because they loved Harold, half of them had complained about him weekly, but because London simply hated being rushed. So William did something unexpected. He didn't attack. He didn't charge at the walls, didn't light torches, didn't demand surrender. Instead, he approached softly, quietly, carefully, like a cat watching a large, suspicious pigeon on the street, trying to figure out whether it should pounce, circle, or pretend it wasn't interested until the pigeon dropped a crumb. William circled London. He marched through surrounding towns. He burned some, spared others, and, most importantly, he cut off the roads that brought food, goods, and supplies into the city. London's merchants felt this first. Merchants always do. Suddenly, prices rose. Ships hesitated to dock. Nobles who traveled to their country estates found soldiers waiting. The city began to feel alone. And while all this happened, William waited. No dramatic speeches, no bold declarations, just waiting. The medieval version of giving someone a very long, very pointed, silent treatment. London hated it. At first, the citizens tried to be defiant. We shall resist. We are Londoners. We fear no one. We still don't like Harold, but that's beside the point. Then the food prices rose. Then the nobles got nervous. Then the winter winds arrived, reminding everyone that inconveniently, people do need to eat. Slowly, hesitation crept in. London's leaders realized something painful. William didn't need to take the city by force. He had already taken the country. London couldn't stand alone, and William offered a clever bargain. Submit, and I will protect your rights, your trade, your wealth. Defy, and he would do whatever needed doing. And William had a reputation for being very efficient when he wanted something. The decision came quietly, without drama, without swords, perhaps even with some exhausted sighing. London opened its gates, and William, with the calm satisfaction of a man who has successfully convinced a very stubborn door to open, entered the city. Not as a conqueror in battle, but as a king by strategy. On Christmas Day, in Westminster Abbey, surrounded by shimmering candles and the solemn chant of monks, William was crowned. William the Conqueror. William the First, King of England. The coronation ceremony itself was eventful, when the English inside the abbey shouted their approval in loud voices. A tradition, to be fair. The Norman soldiers outside thought the crowd was rioting. They panicked. They set nearby houses on fire. People ran in confusion. Priests tried to finish the ceremony while pretending nothing was happening. History is full of dignified moments. This was not one of them, but the crown was placed firmly on William's head. The chants quieted. The rising smoke drifted away on the December air. A new king had taken the throne. A new dynasty had begun. And London, for all its stubborn independence and merchant pride, could do nothing now except adjust its cloak, tighten its sandals, and prepare for the new chapter unfolding, whether it wanted it or not. William wasted no time. He rewarded his Norman supporters with lands. He reorganized the government. He ensured that London would remain the center of wealth, power, and law. And he made sure, with quietly firm hands, that the city would never again question who ruled it. But London, London was never a city to simply accept change. It observed William with a wary kind of respect, like someone reluctantly admitting that the new neighbor who moved in might actually know a thing or two about gardening. Still, the ground had shifted, and in that shift lay the seeds of a new age. Stone replacing timber, French mixing with English, church reform blossoming, merchants adapting, walls strengthening, castles rising, and the great pale Tower of London, not yet built but imagined, beginning to form in William's mind like a shadow of the future. London felt it. The city seemed to pause, breathe, wait. Because whether London liked him or not, William had arrived. He had crossed the sea. He had crowned himself king. And he was not going anywhere. A new king, a new dynasty, and for London, a new chapter that would reshape its streets, its people, its language, and its destiny. History had turned a page, and the sound of it was as soft as the whisper of the Thames flowing beneath a winter sky. The first stones of power. William was many things: ambitious, relentless, clever, and surprisingly patient for a man who spent most of his life swinging swords at problems until they stopped being problems. But above all else, William was deeply, profoundly concerned about safety, specifically his safety. And honestly, he had every reason to be. London, at the best of times, could be a prickly creature. Medieval chroniclers describe Londoners as bold, wealthy, stubborn, argumentative, and suspicious of anyone telling them what to do. Exactly the kind of crowd a newly crowned foreign king does not want glaring at him during breakfast. William could feel it. The eyes on his back, the murmurs in the streets, the subtle but unmistakable vibe of a city thinking, "We're not entirely sure about this guy." Some glared openly, some muttered darkly, and surely in the privacy of their homes, someone sighed into a cup of ale and whispered, "I miss Harold already." William understood these feelings. He didn't take them personally. He simply categorized them as potential uprisings, a mental folder he preferred to keep empty. So he did what Norman rulers seemed almost genetically programmed to do, something they practiced with the same enthusiasm children reserve for jumping into puddles. He built a fortress, not a polite fortress, not a modest, sensible fortress. No. William built a fortress that made a statement, a fortress that said, "Hello, London, I am your king, and here is a very large reminder of that fact." And that fortress became one of the most famous buildings in the world, the Tower of London. The first tower was a wooden box. It didn't begin as the massive stone complex tourists wander through today. The very first version of the tower was a wooden structure, hurriedly assembled on a mound by the river, a place where the Roman walls once stood proud, centuries earlier. Picture it, a tall wooden keep, surrounded by a palisade, and workers who probably complained loudly about splinters, mud, and Norman architects who never used the phrase, "good enough." It was built fast and built clearly, so that any Londoner walking past would think, "Oh, so that man is serious." Because nothing says, "I'm the boss now," like erecting a giant wooden box overlooking the city. And it worked, for a moment. But William didn't want a moment. He wanted forever. Wood burns. Wood rots. Wood collapses under pressure. And most importantly, wood can be torn down by angry citizens with a spare afternoon. William needed something stronger, something towering, something unmistakable, something made of stone. Caen stone, the luxury import of the 11th century. So William ordered ships to sail across the channel again, not with soldiers this time, but with stone. Not just any stone. Caen stone, a pale, creamy limestone quarried in Normandy, beloved by Norman builders for its beauty, softness, and the delightful way it obeyed chisels without arguing. William wanted that stone. He wanted London to wake up every morning, look across the river and be reminded that their king came from Normandy, and that Normandy was here to stay. So ship after ship arrived, loaded with massive blocks of glowing pale stone. Just imagine the logistics. In an age where the fastest form of communication was yelling, and the concept of shipping tracking involved someone squinting at the horizon, trying to see if a boat was late, William organized a cross-channel supply chain. The workers placed the stone block by block, layer by layer, slowly raising what would become known as the White Tower, the heart of the Tower of London. The White Tower rises, Building the White Tower was like planting a flag that could be seen for miles, a declaration carved into the skyline. At first, Londoners gathered around the construction site with curiosity, irritation, and mild jealousy. Londoners love important buildings, just not when someone else is building them. What's he making? A tower. A big tower. Very big. Why so big? To remind us he's king. I miss Harold. Shh. The tower rose slowly, piece by piece. It grew thick stone walls, deep foundations, arched windows, and a presence that could silence a crowd. This was no simple military fort. It was a symbol, a visual argument, a way of saying, try to get rid of me. I dare you. And Londoners understood. They admired it. They resented it. They whispered about it in alehouses. And every morning they saw it again, gleaming pale against the gray sky, a giant reminder that the Normans were here. Stone means stability or control. Stone was important. Anglo-Saxons favored timber for buildings, not because they didn't like stone, but because stone was expensive, slow to work, and required a small army of stonemasons who wanted regular meals and wages. The Normans, however, adored stone. It meant power. It meant authority. It meant permanence. To build in stone was to say, we plan on being here for a very, very long time. So the White Tower was more than a fortress. It was a message carved in rock, a message London could not ignore. A fortress with many purposes. To modern visitors, the Tower of London looks like a castle, a palace, and a museum blended together. In William's time, it was all the following: a royal residence, for when William wanted to sleep somewhere heavily defended, a stronghold for controlling the city, a treasury for storing taxes, gold, silver, and whatever valuables kings enjoy being near, a prison, because every impressive fortress needs a place to put people who say annoying things, a symbol, which is perhaps the most important function of all. Every stone declared Norman dominance. Every wall cast a shadow over the city. Every tower whispered that William was king and would remain king. London's reactions: annoyance, awe, and acceptance. Londoners had opinions. Oh, it's beautiful. It's terrifying. Is that Conquest stone? Show off. Why does it need to be that tall? I bet Harold wouldn't have done this. Stop saying Harold. But deep down, they understood exactly what the tower meant. London was no longer Anglo-Saxon. London was Norman now, whether it liked it or not. And as the tower grew taller, the city changed with it. French words slipped into English conversations. Norman officials arrived with new laws. The church shifted under William's reforms. Markets adjusted. Houses expanded beyond the Roman walls. Guilds began organizing. Streets widened slightly. The tower was just the beginning, the first stone of many, a fixed point in a city that had always been moving. The changing rhythm of London. Life under Norman rule was not all fear and suspicion. It was also opportunity. Stonemasons arrived from all over Europe, eager for work. Craftsmen learned new techniques. Merchants realized that a stable king, even a foreign one, meant stable trade. Builders, carpenters, dock workers, and laborers all felt the pulse of a city growing stronger. London, for all its stubbornness, loved growth. It loved trade. It loved activity. And William's rule brought plenty of that. The tower seemed to anchor the city, pulling new life toward it, shaping how the city expanded around the Thames. Even the skyline changed. Where once only church spires reached the sky, now a massive square fortress rose above them, impossible to ignore. It cast a shadow, sometimes comforting, sometimes intimidating, but always present. A message written in stone. When the White Tower was finally completed, William stood before it and saw more than a military fort. He saw the foundation of his dynasty, a pledge to the future, a promise to his supporters, and a warning to anyone who might dream of rebellion. London watched him watch the tower, and perhaps in that moment, the city began to understand that the Normans had come not just to rule, but to reshape England entirely. The White Tower was the first chapter of that story, a chapter written in pale stone carried across the sea, placed with care and precision, one block at a time. Life under the tower. As years passed, the tower became part of London's daily life. Children pointed at it. Merchants used it as a landmark. Sailors knew they were nearing the city when they saw its pale mass rising from the riverbank. Travelers approached it with awe, and rebels stared at it and thought, "This complicates things." The tower stood firm, silent, watching. It became the heartbeat of Norman authority, a pulse London could feel through its streets. And with every passing season, every market day, every sermon, every argument, every celebration, the tower settled deeper into the city's identity. London was changing, becoming something new, something larger, and all of it began with those first stones William ordered from Normandy. The Normans had arrived, and they were here to stay. The city learned quickly. Life under the Normans was not just about new kings. It was about new architecture, new customs, new laws, new hierarchies, and new expectations. The Tower of London, strong and pale against the skyline, was the first true monument of that transformation. It stood as a reminder. England had entered a new era. London had a new master. And nothing would ever be the same again. London's new masters. The Normans were efficient, almost too efficient, the kind of efficient that makes everyone else uncomfortable, like when someone visits your home and immediately starts rearranging your furniture because they just have a better vision for the space. That was the Norman style. They didn't arrive in England merely to rule. They arrived to organize, to restructure, to adjust every system until it resembled the tidy, orderly governance they were used to back in Normandy. London, meanwhile, was still trying to recover from the emotional whiplash of having a new king, a new language, and a giant stone tower, all within a decade. The Norman overhaul begins. The Normans reorganized everything. Land ownership. The old Anglo-Saxon nobility saw their estates shrink, shift, or disappear entirely. Taxes. Normans loved taxes. They loved counting, measuring, recording, and taxing. If they could tax the idea of taxes, they probably would have markets and trade. New regulations, new tolls, new officials, new paperwork. Well, medieval paperwork. Parchment, quills, and monks sighing quietly. Justice system. Anglo-Saxon law had been community-based. Norman law was sharper, more centralized, less forgiving. And it definitely involved more documents and more Latin. Church structure. Norman bishops replaced Anglo-Saxon ones. Priests trained differently. Ceremonies shifted. Choirs gained new melodies that were beautiful, but impossible to hum. No corner of life was untouched. The Normans didn't simply bring a new government. They brought a new culture. Londoners watched in silence, a little stunned, a little irritated, wondering if this wave of organization would ever slow down. It would not. The Anglo-Saxons lose their center stage. Before the Conquest, Anglo-Saxon nobles ran England. They controlled the courts, the countryside, the trade routes, the earldoms. After the Conquest, they went from being in charge to being, well, less in charge. Some lost their lands entirely. Others became tenants under Norman overlords. A few resisted and were crushed. Some fled north. Some fled overseas. And some stayed and quietly muttered things like, "I miss Harold." But the shift was undeniable. England now had new masters, and London felt it more than anyone. A new language on the lips of power. French became the language of the elite, of the court, of law, of noble households, of anyone who wanted to sound important. Latin remained the language of the church. The scribes, the monks bent over their manuscripts like tired spiders weaving letters. And English, Old English, the language of Beowulf and long poetic laments. English became the language people apologized for speaking. Merchants spoke it, of course. Craftsmen spoke it. Boatmen used it to shout at each other across the river. But if you wanted to impress someone, really impress them, you tossed in a French phrase here and there. Suddenly, conversations sounded like, "Good day, sir." "Bonjour." "I miss Harold." English began to absorb Norman French the way bread absorbs soup, slowly at first, then all at once. Words blended, merged, twisted and softened. Centuries later, this would produce modern English, the language where we have 3 words for almost everything, because we couldn't decide which one we liked better. But London adapted, as it always does. Despite the political shockwaves, the city continued functioning. Markets still opened at dawn. Fishmongers called out their catch. Blacksmiths hammered at their anvils. Merchants argued over prices in a mixture of languages that probably confused everyone involved. Ships still crowded the wharves along the Thames, unloading goods from Normandy, Flanders, Scandinavia, and anywhere else that dared approach London's bustling riverfront. And alehouses stayed noisy, very noisy, because Londoners, faced with rapid political change, did what Londoners always do. They went to the pub. But some things never change. The bakers still burned bread. In fact, burning bread was something of a London tradition. It would one day lead to, well, a much bigger fire. But that is a story for another episode. For now, the important point is this. London did not crumble. London adapted. London always adapts. The tower watches over everything. In the background of these changes, the Tower of London grew taller and more permanent. A silent watcher, a guardian, a threat, a symbol. Each new stone was a reminder. The Normans were here. The Normans were in charge. And here is the strange thing about symbols of power. Even people who dislike them grow used to them faster than they expect. Within a few years, the tower became part of London's emotional landscape. People used it as a landmark. Meet me near the big, scary building. Which one? The scariest one. Travelers approaching from the river saw the gleaming white tower and felt they were entering a place of importance. Merchants used it to impress visitors. Children pointed at it with awe. Parents told cautionary tales about it. Rebels stared at it and rethought their life decisions. And Londoners, even the ones who muttered, "I miss Harold," could not deny the tower's practicality. It kept order. It stabilized the city. It protected the river. It made London matter in a new way. The rhythm of a city under new rule. Under Norman control, the city's rhythm shifted subtly. Noise patterns changed. More French accents in the markets, more Latin in the churches, more shouting from officials who insisted on new regulations. Streets changed. Wider in some places, repaired in others. Expanded markets popping up where farmland had once been. Clothing changed. More fur, more embroidery, more colors imported through trade that the Normans encouraged. Food changed. New spices, new recipes, new cooking styles, and a general sense that meals should be richer, heavier, and more complicated. Social structures changed. The old Anglo-Saxon hierarchies mixed awkwardly with Norman feudalism, like two puzzle pieces that technically fit but don't look entirely comfortable. Church life changed. Norman bishops introduced new architecture, new music, new rites, and tightened discipline in monasteries, which meant monks sighed even more than usual. And through it all, London remained busy, alive, loud, crowded, fragrant in a way only medieval cities can be. The Normans changed London, but London also changed the Normans. Norman officials became used to English markets, English prices, English weather, impossible to avoid, and English humor, dry even in the 11th century. A city learning to live with its new rulers. For most ordinary Londoners, life continued with surprising normalcy. They still had to grind grain, gut fish, haul cargo, cure leather, weave cloth, and occasionally throw buckets of water out the window at unfortunate pedestrians. Norman rule affected their taxes and their landlords far more than their daily routines. If you visited a London street in 1070, you'd see a bowyer shaping yew wood, a baker fanning loaves or burning them, a fish seller yelling aggressively, a monk wobbling past on an errand, a child chasing a chicken, a dog chasing the child, a French-speaking noble trying to buy fruit and failing to understand the price, a Norman soldier pretending not to be impressed by the market noise, and someone somewhere muttering, "I still miss Harold." It was chaotic, noisy, smelly, energetic, and profoundly, unmistakably London. the Tower's shadow, and London's future. As the Normans continued building, ruling, reorganizing, and adjusting, the Tower remained the centerpiece of their authority. It cast a symbolic shadow over the city. Not always dark, not always threatening, but always present. A reminder, a declaration, a promise. As decades passed, Londoners began to accept that the Normans were not temporary visitors. They were here to stay. Their laws, their architecture, their language, their customs, their ambition, all of it was now woven into the fabric of the city. Life under the Normans was different, yes. Sometimes difficult, sometimes frustrating, but undeniably transformative. London was no longer an Anglo-Saxon town. It was becoming something bigger, stronger, more complex. A city that would one day become the beating heart of an empire. And in the background, the Tower of London stood tall, watching it all unfold. With stone walls that kept secrets, and a pale face that reflected the dawn. A new era had begun, and London, resilient, stubborn, brilliant London, was learning how to thrive in it.
Tonight, we have watched a kingdom change hands and a city begin to transform. William crossed the sea, claimed the crown, and raised the first great stones of Norman power beside the Thames. New rulers, new laws, and new languages slowly entered London's streets. For now, let the White Tower fade into the mist. Let the river grow quiet, and allow the distant sounds of medieval London to soften around you. Rest gently, my friend. Our journey will continue as we step into the streets, churches, and daily life of Norman London.